make sure this thing is not set to. There we go. Edit video. Details. Channel video. Almost there on YouTube, and then this gives people time to file in.
Sure.
You know, and then I'll go ahead and options, get shareable link, and then I'm gonna go on my Facebook. Say we are live on YouTube. YouTube. And myself. Come chat. This on YouTube. Let it do its thing. Post it there. Okay, so now like you can reshare my thing if you want.
Cool. Okay, that's all.
And I can kill that window, and I want to go into live control room on YouTube so I can see that. And if I got that, then I think we're good to go. Yeah. So that tells me whether or not my connection's good over there. And I see it's kind of salty over there. I'll just hit stop. Maybe it'll come back. So, how's it going today, man? How is I got really screwed up, man. I thought you were 6 hours ahead of me, but I thought that meant you were closer in time than we were. So if you can imagine that, I thought, and then I thought you were 7 hours ahead of me and even closer in time. But it's 8 there and it's 3 here, so that means you're 5 hours ahead of me.
Right. Oh, 1 second. I'm trying to concentrate here on just exactly how to share this post. I'm sorry if I'm looking like
no
I'm
worries.
kind of spaced out looking at what's happening.
Yeah, I know it.
It's all fresh and new. Bear with me 1 second until I figure it out.
So while you do that, I'll tell whoever's watching that we are trying a new system that is a little bit more sophisticated than the last one, where we've got complete access to us doing this live and being able to take care of the overlays and the screen and the various things. But the problem we had with the old setup was we couldn't share media. I couldn't turn on the computer desktop and you and I both see it or anything like that. But we're working on it. And this one we can. I can go like this and you see that as well. So we can both comment on things like that.
Happy days.
So, let's see.
So are we live now then?
Yes, we are live now.
Okay.
We are absolutely live. So how you doing over there?
Yeah, good, man. Absolutely amazing, in fact. I'm surprised I've actually still got like energy left after the last week of that stuff I've been working on. Well, you saw like the PDF of what I have been transcribing, so you'll understand exactly where my head's at.
that thing scares me. I'm already. I took one look at that thing. And I can't read sheet music anyway, so let me see. I'm going to hide that. And then let's go ahead and hide our caption. I can't read sheet music anyway, and so I'm sitting here looking at all of the notes on that thing, and it was just devastating. It's like, how long could that possibly take you to just even apply all those things together into that? I mean, that just looks like you said, it's almost like a computer readout.
Yeah, well, that's what it sounds like. I mean, I'm not sure where. I mean, Sean's inspiration came from for the non-Caro thing, but it must have been obviously something that non-Caro's written. I know that he was like heavily into like understanding a lot about the guy and how he used to, punch the things in for real. It was something like you had mentioned on that video. 400 or 500 notes in a single second was possible through this kind of machinery that non-Caro was using. And when you hear what he's done and how he's tried to emulate that on his song, dedicated, I suppose, to him, was like he's got lines running underneath, contrary to lines. It's almost like ascending and descending at the same time. So to try and make sense of it as one phrase is almost impossible. But I think what the idea was to try and to play both those lines simultaneously at that speed, which is just insane.
On that AIM talk, he says something about how the inspiration for it was the old piano, the rolling pianos
Yeah,
that non-caro, right?
yeah,
And so he could get it to do something like 400 notes per second or some kind of crazy rate of speed.
yeah.
And so what I'm thinking, because I never had a chance to sit and really ask him about it, I think that kind of went over my head the whole time I was with Sean. I don't even know that I listened to it. I just figured it was him the second I heard it, the same as Buckethead did apparently.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean,
you
I can
know,
understand why it was.
because he placed it in the editing, he placed them so accurately. You could tell that Sean could hear notes faster than the mind most people's minds could comprehend, because he was able to still keep spaces somehow in between the notes in some form, so that you were starting to hear this pecking no order to the notes. But like you were saying, there was like notes in between notes. You had said something like that, and I think that's what he was describing in that AIM video. Is that he was? I thought for years, and now I know I was wrong. I thought for years that he did it one note at a time. But what he says on that AIM thing is he didn't do that. He played passages and then went and edited those passages together to stack them on top of each other.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. It's not happening all the time. It just happens in specific passages at certain points, and you'll be going along, and like maybe like 2 or 3 bars is just. It's mostly really crazy chromatic stuff. It doesn't really have any sort of tonal center, so there's nothing really to hang on to. In fact, you know what it sounds like is one of those 60s sci-fi versions of an old computer. I don't know if you've seen Star Trek, but it goes. It's
Well,
just
you're blowing my mind.
completely off
You're
the
blowing
map.
my mind, because I have always said since the day that I met Sean Lane, I said to him the first time that he played so fast he sounds like a computer on backfire.
Yeah,
And that was like my old joke, like it was like a computer was melting down. It was just so all over the place.
mm,
And what makes that really, really cool that you say that too is that's what I thought when I first heard you. When someone told me to go and check you out, that's I was like, because they say it, like we've said before on this podcast, they said to me that Roy sounds like dial up, or no, it sounds like broadband internet connecting. And I've never heard anybody describe another guitar player other than me describing Sean that way. And so that's when I checked you out. But
I'm
you're
not sure.
right. That's the
Yeah,
thing, is it sounds like a computer. And I guess what we're hearing is maybe that player piano thing, because Sean says in that AIM video how it just sounds psychotic because it's
yeah.
just so many notes, which is genuinely faster than the human mind can comprehend.
Well, it's the way that the notes have been organized. Because normally when Sean's like actually done anything else with when it's improvised, it actually makes theoretical sense when he might be playing fives, sixes, or nines within like maybe like an E pentatonic, or if he's playing a chromatic passage for like a diminished run or whatever, it makes sense from
Hmm.
a harmony point of view. Whereas when you analyze the Kaiser non Caro thing, it has no tonal center. So like when you're actually listening to it, it doesn't make any kind of sense in the sense of being able to use it to improvise because it's just so insane. It's like playing with minor
Yeah.
seconds, but in a chromatic way. And when you listen to it, it sounds like the first time I played it slow and was able to negate exactly what note was coming after each other. It sounds like madness. If you were to imagine what madness would sound like in music,
Genuine
that's
madness.
genuine madness. That's what it sounds like. And
Do
yeah,
you do you think how it's crazy, because Buckethead attempted to do it in that the way he described it, he thought it was both of Sean's hands were on the neck at the same time, like he was
yeah.
overhanded tapping on all of it. And are you finding it? Are you finding the passages to where you're going from A to B to Z? I mean, that's going to be insane when you master that.
He has lines running contrary to each other sometimes that are the intervals are so wide apart It would be
Ah,
it'd be physically impossible to play with just the left hand alone, unless you were to open tune it in some way where the notes could be closer together. But
gotcha.
but that's been recorded over different tracks and then put together to sound out the way it is. But through saying that, it's only certain sections where you have these runs running contrary to each other. It's not all the time.
Mm.
So for the majority, it would be feasible, although dangerous. I think they should come with a government health warning. We might end up in the hospital trying to achieve it. Certainly, when I looked at it and I got to the end of it, and I thought, okay, to actually wind this up and play at 2 speeds going to be one of those things that you're going to have to do, slowly and be
Yeah.
careful about how you're doing it because the intervals are so wide. So it's been a challenge just getting the right notes. But when I started to see the notes and how they were put together, I'm thinking this isn't making any kind of logical sense at all in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's the whole point. The whole point is that
Right.
it does that.
Well, that yeah was to achieve madness, and
Mm.
because doesn't he say that in there? He says somebody when he's referring to Nankaro, he says that's what that sounded like was some sort of insanity,
Yeah,
the mind just breaking apart because it can't.
the mad
Yeah.
genius. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's mind-boggling,
yeah.
and
Well,
to be able to get as far as you'll get. Yeah, I bet you that'll be really interesting if we could ever get you and Buckethead in the room together, and see exactly where he stops and where you stop, and go, okay, this part right
yeah.
here is physically impossible with the left hand.
Mm.
You know.
I'd actually contemplated thinking of. I've not got to the stage of kind of put positioning all the notes to put it in a way that would be a comprehensive way to be able to play it. I think I'm going to have to rejig it in a way that could possibly end up being either an open tune or an alternate way of tuning the guitar to be able to play it with just the left hand. I'll see what I can try and do with the left just as it is, but I think yeah, I think I'll be calling the Nino. It's I'm gonna end hospital time for Roy. But no, seriously, it is complete insanity. That most of it's chromatic, but it's chromatic in a way that because it has no tonal center, you really don't understand where it's going to go next. So it's something to make any sort of musical sense of to play it live. You would have to memorize every single note in the same way as you would memorize anything else. Um, I'm not even sure if that's what Sean had envisioned doing or wanting to have done when he played the thing live, or if he was going to get someone else to play that or have that running as a backing track, or how he was going to achieve it. I've absolutely no idea. I would really pity the person that had to play it.
Yeah.
who's going to be mad enough to try
Well,
and
right
achieve
now it's you, so that's you know.
I'm not even the and I'm knocking on 50. I mean, I think to be playing that in every single consecutive night for something like 100 dates, your hands would probably end up like
Swollen, yeah, just totally swollen, and then all of the skin on your fingertips would just be hard as nails by that time, where you just could tap on glass, and sound like. But wow, and what in contrast that with one of the questions that we had gotten on your previous video with gray pianos flying.
Oh,
So what? How do you contrast? What so the question was what do you find more interesting about the gray piano's flying solo?
right. Well, there's a few things happening there that really were ear twisters because there's a lot of tonal differences in different sections of the solo as it's being played. So the way that I concluded it had to have been recorded was he must have had different setups or at least different EQing on different parts to be able to play the solo the way it was. It wasn't just a case of for example, I played with two different picks
Mm-hmm.
for that to produce different tones, and that's really important as well. I couldn't, for example, just use the 2mm. I had to use a thicker pick, like the one I designed to play certain phrases because of the way I play. But the picks themselves, the thicknesses of them, had to have played an important role in the playing of that, as well as just the EQing of the amps and possibly different amps and different cabs he was using throughout that. And if we're only talking maybe a minute and a half, but there's so much happening tonally. And when I tried to match the amp tones, I was having on thinking, oh, I've got something for the first 30 seconds, but it's all of a sudden switched, and it's not just rolling off or backing off in the volume control that's doing it, it's something else. So it was a real head scratch to try and compare the amp tones and get close to it. So for me, the interesting part of it was really that, because when he backed off and he used the dynamics and gain, which is something you find with a lot of the great players, that his control over the gain was really quite incredible. It sounds musical, but it's not something I hear a lot of other players do in a musical way, if you know what I mean. Backing off the volume and playing with certain dynamics and using different picks to produce different frequencies is something that's it's a refined thing he had going on there. I wish he was alive where I could sit and pick his brains about it. But that was a huge part. It was a huge part of that solo for me, and it was quite a shock, because it's one of those things you don't realize what's going on until you start getting into it yourself, and you start breaking it apart, and you start listening with a different kind of ear. It's
genuinely the reason that we started this series. That's exactly what you're doing, is you're going in and taking this second look at this thing to really bear down and try to understand the mechanics of just his style, not just his style, but the mechanics of what it is that created the playing that resulted. You know what I mean? Like, you're not just going in and saying, it's not a review, in other words. This is, you're going in and really breaking this down almost scientifically. And so it's really fascinating to me when you're saying to me along the way these different messages that are just like, wow, you're doing a detective, like you're going in like a detective, like Sherlock Holmes, and going, well, this almost sounds like different cabinets for just a split second. And a different pick for just this section of notes. And you've got to know, I mean, on Gray Pianos Flying, that's on a Warner Brothers record, so it wasn't as easy as just saying that he sat in Pro Tools and took a whole bunch of parts and just pasted them together. I mean, this was on 2-inch tape. This was, labored over. And so that adds even another layer of mystery to it, because you can't just dismiss it and say, well, this was a lot of editing. This is like, you don't really have that luxury when you've got a 2-inch tape machine going. Exactly. I mean, they did have Pro Tools, granted, but still, it was not as simple as all that.
I think what it sounds like he's done is he's played, possibly he's played 2 or 3 takes, and he's taken the best take out specific sections using different kinds of, maybe it's just the amp was in a different position, or maybe it was just a different day. I have no idea. But you can hear the colors change as the solo evolves, and it's really beautifully kind of all laced together. And you don't really notice it until you start to break it down, and I'm thinking, okay, that's a completely different vibe. This sounds more Les Paul. This sounds more like Strat, Super Strat, and certain notes, the way they're played and bent. You're thinking, okay, that sounds definitely Les Polish. Is that his old Roland he's playing there? Is that the Ibanez, or is that the VG? I'm not quite sure. So I'm trying all these options, and I'm using different guitars to try and get those options, but still playing it on the same guitar to get an end result. That was the biggest challenge, was playing all those different tones on the VGR, which is capable of it. But when you hear those beautiful Les Paul sort of tones coming through, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to start using the backing off the tone control in the VJ to try and emulate that type of that vibe. He's got some real Hendrixy sort of type of things on the grave pianos thing when he's bending notes, and it's done so subtly you don't notice it at first, and then you have a few more listens, you're going, okay, I'm hearing how that's happening. And I would say, as far as advice for maybe some of the younger players that are maybe listening to this, is don't skip all that real what sounds like it's easy.
Right.
It's really tricky, and I mean, he's literally playing from a 16th to a 32nd back to like a 16th, and then he's back onto whatever else in the blink of an eye, and it's all controlled perfectly with all this beautiful vibrato going on. So to skip that is missing the point, I think, entirely to one of the key parts of his technique and his playing and the way why he sounds so good and so musical. So yeah, it's been an education.
It's like you're I don't know, man. It's got to be crazy for you because you're not a beginner, but it's like it's taking you back through the stages of you're seeing where a beginner needs to go to understand it. Again, it's going back to the detective work. It's like you're using Occam's razor and you're cutting through and going, okay, literally before the fingers even hit the neck, what's going on. Like in this case, like you could be hearing different string gauges on different takes. Like a section he may want fatter with, you know what I mean?
Now,
Maybe 4 and 5 guitars with different gauges, and this section needs to be this gauge for like a symphonic reason.
I have no idea. I would be guessing. So I mean, I can't pass judgment on how it would be. But I do know that from the app I was using, when on recording, which is just guitar rig, the A/B cab comparison along with the different mics, I was thinking, okay, this could be something as simple as a mic placement or a different mic on a different day.
On a different day, yeah.
Or the same day, possibly. I have no idea. But
Right.
But it was it's so kind of obvious when you get into the microscopic view of listening to each and every note that it becomes a bit of a head scratcher by the time you get into just bar 3. It's exactly what's happening. But it's maybe I'm overthinking it and maybe overhearing or because sometimes it's like a fractal that art of hearing. You know what I mean? It's like you go into the sound and then into the sound and then before you know it, you're down the rabbit hole so far you can't really determine where you start and where you end. It's one of those weird things. But there's definitely some either something maybe even with his hands happening where one day was maybe more on than another. I have no idea. I'm just guessing.
I
was hoping you could
I do know that
for me.
I do know that when he signed the deal, he went to a place in Memphis that's no longer around called Keyboards in Black and White. That was the name of the music store. And it primarily, and it was in Midtown Memphis that dealt in obviously keyboards, right? And but they were the only place in Memphis at that time that had Pro Tools. And so, or the equivalent of it. I'm not even sure if it was Pro Tools at that time, but it was when he got his advance from Warner Brothers. He went to Keyboards in Black and White, and he bought the Mac from my old boss at Horseshoe Casino, the production manager, Michael Raines. And Michael Raines can actually explain because he was the one that sold it to him. He got the keyboard and he got the Mac, and then he bought a DA88, but I don't know that he had two. I think he just had one. So I know that some of the stuff was done at his house before he would go to Nashville and then go to the LA sessions with Andy Johns. And so I'm wondering if some of those things may have been takes that he did at his house, and then he's bringing it into the studio, plays that to the tape, and then comes in and layers in some stuff on top of that. So that may be a little bit of it too.
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, it sounds like
I do know those parts.
Yeah. That makes sense. But yeah, that's probably all it is. That's probably all it is. I mean, you have to be really listening to be able to differentiate exactly the difference.
But the beauty in the way that you're
subtle.
the beauty in the way that you're noticing all of that is really fascinating because that I don't think you're overthinking it at all. I think that it's a fascinating second look, like I'm saying, at what the result was, and without all the being able to pick his brain. I mean, so you're just looking at the result, and because that's what the legacy is. That's what lives on forever. So it's just.
I think what's really quite interesting, the amount of people that have come forward and have said, yeah, you've got the tone nailed, and I'm thinking, how many people out there really like his tone? It wasn't just his playing, it wasn't just what he played and the fact that he was able to play what he
Yeah.
did. It's the way that he sounded, as well, and obviously that's a huge draw for Sean's fan base. So this is why I think it was quite important, or really important, in fact, that I get as close to that tone as I could, without actually, spending, thousands and thousands, actually
Yeah.
try to buy Sean's actual rig, which would be just insane. But yeah, um,
So you were using, like you said before, you were using the like you found a Gilmore setting that was really interesting. That kind of that's a weird clue. That's like a context clue. I mean, you obviously modified that setting to get
no,
to the accurate as accurate as possible. But that blows my mind too, because
hmm,
I never really like Pink Floyd. I never really heard Sean say one way or the other. I mean, I know that he loves Zappa. That's about it. That's all I can really remember. And
hmm.
so it's just that's pretty interesting. What do you think in terms of in that setup? Because you put a screenshot in that video. What were the plugins that were in the chain?
Yeah, that was, as I recall, it was a Tube Screamer, kind of something that emulated the guitar rig. It was a Tube Screamer overdrive, and that was just pushing hard what was the Dave Gilmour rig, which was, I think, a high watt head, and I think it was the 4x12 of the high watt head, two 4x12s, and with the
And then
AV.
you had mic. You moved the mics around on the.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
one was close, one was kind of, one was dry,
Right.
one was wet, that kind of type of deal. And it was good to actually have both mics, kind of center to the side of the cones of the speaker, but one mic dry and one mic wet, so you could actually
Hmm.
hear the notes as well. Because when something's that saturated, sometimes even when you're backing off in the volume and you're trying to get dynamics to try and get the notes to point, be there and be there with all its little, delicate bends, to hear it all in such detail. You kind of It's good to have the dry sound there, sometimes more prominent than the wet, even when you're trying to take in like all the reverb of the room. So it was a delicate balance in trying to get that right in all these different sections as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think there's something about the high watt head when it's pushed hard with the old Ibanez Tube Screamer that creates that certain tone. I'm guessing. What was the guy's name that came out and designed the amp? Was it
Bob
GI?
Jika. Bob Jika. Yeah.
That's him. That's him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard them reviews, and I've heard a couple of guys playing that amp, and that's the tone. Apart from the West Tone pedal, that's his sound. You can hear it straight off the bat. It's like, oh my, that's it.
That's
It's,
it. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's the tubes. Yeah. This. Oh man, that's amazing.
yeah, definitely something in there. I'm not sure how he builds those amps, but I mean, from what I gather, just from plugging straight in, it's just immediate. That's the sound. It's not.
Hmm.
It's not even like you would have to tweak it that hard to be able to get, any kind of result. It's just that is it.
Hmm.
Now I've heard the Westbury pedal as well. That's kind of close. That was interesting. I don't think they do them anymore. I think they're one of those discontinued things. But I would imagine something like a Westbury into any sort of amp, just direct straight into it, would give you the close or something similar to what you're listening to on Cars of Town.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's been an interesting experience messing around with gain. As I say, I'm a clean player myself, so this has been delving into the murky waters of Gainesville.
Well, you're making the most of the quarantine, man. You're
Yeah,
going in and really bearing down, and we appreciate you doing it too. These videos are getting really great responses, and it's just been kind of overwhelming. The positive has totally eclipsed any negative that we would have thought would have came along.
yeah,
Because
that's
obviously,
good.
there's always going to be people out there that are
Oh,
going to
yeah,
complain no matter what. I mean, they do
yeah,
it for attention, and it's just been really nice
yeah.
though that the positive responses, and I'm looking forward to the same once we finish. What do we have coming up? What's coming up? You're gonna
Right.
do.
Yeah. Like, well, the last one's obviously the final second look of this Sean series. But what I've decided to do is to actually keep the Nancaro thing that I've just finished transcribing, because that took 9 straight hours of ear bending to to get that nailed. And I'm going to treat that as a separate thing from the last video, and then that way we've got like a little bit extra as well. So for the last one, we've got the ending section for Grey Pianos and some of the more crazy ideas, motives, phrases that Sean would have used in his improvisation, and just some of his. One of those, I think, one of the things that stood out to me that were more insane, or the thing that he did with like the diminished arpeggiated sequences. And I thought, right, I'm gonna put that in because a couple of people have come forward and said, well, you put something like that in, or are you going to be running over something like that in the series? And I thought, well, okay, I'll give them something a little bit extra, and I'll put in a few of his phrases. So that was interesting, getting that under the fingers and transcribing that. Pretty easy to transcribe because it's already been done. It's pretty easy to follow. It's not like a piece of music where you have different notes playing different rhythms, and you have to put all that in, punch all that in. It's pretty like it's just 30-second notes, like bleed, you know.
Yeah.
But really, really has been a lot of practice. That and the augmented passages he plays as well. So I decided I'd do a bit of both, and a couple of other phrases that were used in Grey Pianos, and one of his sections on pentatonics where he uses like fours, five, sixes, and incorporate that. So you've got something to play around for your own improvisations, and to give you some ideas to be inspired to try to maybe check out more and get more in depth to what Sean was, doing. And certainly when I first heard Sean way back to 27 years ago, something like that. The thing that stood out to me more were the rhythmic passages he would use. He wouldn't just use sixes like a lot of players, like 3 notes per string. He'd be playing like backing up and playing nines, which is a bit tricky for the first finger as well. Playing things in octaves that were obviously a little bit more tricky, where you had it seemed like he was going more into the jazz terrain the
Mm-hmm.
more that he was getting through his life, and it seemed he was going less shred and definitely more into jazz waters. And I think that's the direction we would have probably ended up seeing him, go into had he lived a bit longer. But I could see that in the note choices, and I could see how it was evolving through the years as well. And certainly some of the things he was playing with Jonas, you could see the old Sean, but you could see this transition happening in his improvisation as well. So yeah, it's been a weird and wonderful and eye-opening journey so far. So this is what you'll be getting in the last video in the series.
Let's give a
Basically.
shout out to Busker. We see your comments. We're trying to learn how this relay works on the chat. I see him over here on the said this is great, guys. Roy, let's see, Roy, can you play something for us? And he's got his hands up too. So somebody's wanting. Somebody's asking for live Roy Marchbank. You feel like playing anything?
Well, I can show you like exactly what I was talking about when regarding like the sixes and nine thing, for example.
Yeah. Please do.
Let's see. Hold on. Give me a second here to kind of get my bits
Absolutely.
and bobs together.
I'm gonna see if I know how to do this spotlight. Would switch to you there, yeah. And then I'm down here at the bottom now. You guys can tell that I'm smoking, so say no to cigarettes, kids. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I gave up smoking a while ago. It's just one of those like tricky habits, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was that really stuck out when we Sean was like these groups of six and nine. He does that with the diminished thing. So when you're crossing the strings in a linear sort of straight fashion, you're able to get from A to B quicker than you would be normally. And if you're playing something that's more jazz orientated, but it's more arpeggiated, it's a lot more difficult. So, for example, if you're playing, I'm just going to use my fingers here because it's all got to be legato.
Yeah.
So, for example, 6, just getting your fingers to just major, yeah, and then the next octave. So instead of so he would maybe play some like a group of 9, followed by another group of 9, followed by another group of 12. So you've got that.
Damn.
Along those lines, yeah. And he would expand on that and play like the something like say diminished. Yeah, sorry. Hear that okay?
Yeah, you could turn up just a tiny bit. Yeah, what you did
okay.
There you go.
So that whole thing of using that first finger to be able to jump. Getting that first finger to move is where he was coming from. He explains that in one of his solo videos. So when you come to covering the whole board, oops, you get the idea. So the first finger that I learned was the first finger became the machine to enable that sort of kind of playing to happen where the speed was happening. I always used to think it was the third and the fourth finger, the weaker fingers. But in actual fact, this finger has always been a muting finger before in the past. You see these things here when I'm recording. I like to keep things super clean when I'm recording as well. And I always used to use the first finger for muting everything and have these 3 fingers free.
Yeah.
And what I realized was when I was tying this finger down to becoming the muting finger, and it wasn't really working at all. So for a long period, this finger just became, it wasn't really doing much else but that. And it took a long time to actually jump between the individual strings and get that moving by itself. And that's what I learned from working in Sean's passages. So if you're working any of Sean's stuff, working that first finger there, I think he talks about a little bit about it with the diminished thing.
Well, a lot of people would use that. I mean, I know I'm used to doing that to bar chords, and so you've got that. So you're sliding up a whole entire chord, and then you got the whole length of the finger, using it almost like a capo. And so I think a lot of our mentality is to rely heavily or lean into placing that first finger as a cementing point of beginning, and then just like a lot of times you'll see like if I'm even playing air guitar, you'll see people that do that to their first finger and then start doing this over here. So and then and then you see on Sean's instructional videos that he's using all 4 like that, So that's really interesting. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and I mean, especially if you're playing with a low action as well, you've got all this other you've got all this other noise happening where, like, if you play with a slightly higher action, you're able to get the notes popping out and you can still mute them a little bit easier. But if you've got the action that low, you'll hear a lot of rattling, a lot of buzzing. The guitar tends to vibrate in a certain way where you can't really mute that out. If you want to keep the first finger free to actually move, then the only other muting mechanism you have is the right hand side of your hand. And I just kind of think, well, I'm going to start muting this bottom end of the guitar here just for fun, see what happens. And so for recording or playing live, sometimes I use that. It's not always necessary, especially on the acoustic. If you've got a slightly higher action, you can throw away the rags. It's not necessary. But also to play with different gauges of pick, thicknesses of pick. I designed the Fat Boy pick to make some passages easier, so it just slipped off the string. But it's not necessary. It's not a necessary pick to actually, have to use. It just makes the playing like that kind of way where you're really going for it. It makes it a little bit easier on the joints. But certainly, and for the tones, I think it's necessary to be able to change picks as well. if you listen to an acoustic, it's really obvious on an acoustic guitar. If you play, for example, a really thin pick to a really thick pick, you can hear it straight away. And also you can dig in more with different artificial harmonics and all this stuff. But I've yet to see a pick that is able to do it all.
Yeah, like
I think
well,
I
the
might
one
actually,
you make, do you ever like flip it around in mid flight and to the different, because you've got those different
yeah,
beveled edges on there for those
yeah,
different reasons.
yeah.
That's a
Well, but it's really specifically for that kind of way of playing, especially for alternate picking. It just slips off the string that much easier.
mhm.
But what I would really like the idea of doing is designing a pick that has different thicknesses on different sides, so you can actually have all different gauges of pick, or as many as you would use in a gig, on different sides, so you don't have to be using 3 different picks to produce different tones. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
It's all in just in the one hand. Yeah, that's another thing in the back burner, but unfortunately, I don't have the time to be able to do it all,
Yeah. Yeah,
or,
there's
or the money to be able to go to, like, the next design guys and produce another thing for 3D printing. So, yeah.
Hey, I don't know. Is that on the horizon? Maybe the Fat Boy 2.0.
Well, I've been messing around with different gauges and I'm actually I'm open to making picks for people of different gauges.
I gotcha.
But
Yeah, yeah,
but I really like the idea of having one that something in my hand, but I can just flip it around and get a different tone and not have to worry about too much EQ and different pedals or whatever else, or stepping another preset when it should just come from the fingers. So
yeah.
I play a lot of acoustic that way because I kind of get a really good idea of what it's going to sound like in an electric session, which is exactly why I play electric with a clean tone. I can hear everything. I hear the dynamics. I can hear the different tone changes in the EQ. But yeah, so maybe, who knows? In the horizon, we'll maybe get a pick that has 3 different gauges and
So
3 different edges.
incidentally, one thing we only touched briefly on the last podcast was your musical history, really.
Hmm.
So, like, can you give us a little bit more of a kind of an in depth, or maybe more
Yeah,
in depth,
sure.
or I just literally said in depth, Mike Tyson over here. Uh,
Yeah, I think what's really important for a lot of musicians is that it's an expensive way of life, and it's not always
hey,
feasible.
Mitzi, we got Sean Lane's sister in the house.
Awesome. Hey, Mitch, how you doing? It's not always possible or feasible to be able to survive just on music alone. You've got to go out there and you've got to do other jobs and
Mm-hmm.
knuckle down and be able to, like, pull everything out of the bag just until you can tide yourself over enough to get those extra students in, or to get the next gig in, or the next tour or whatever. So I mean, there's for me, when I left, I think we got to, like, when I was in Edinburgh and I just left music college. I went to Ireland for 5 years, and from Ireland, from doing a lot of things in Ireland, there was a lot of session work. That's basically what makes a musician back then. It's what made you good, and you had to really
Yeah.
be on the ball. You had to be in your gig and be able to pull it out and be able to separate and do the chord charts. And when you're sitting there in the theatre and you're reading through the chord charts, if you messed up big style, then there's always some other guy chopping at the door waiting to get in. So you had to be on your money. Yeah, that made me the player that I became to be because of the pressure that was on me back then. You don't get it anymore. The old gigs of, like, going into a studio and sitting and playing their session for like 30 minutes to play a track and then out the door, they're gone. It's because everybody does it all at home now, and it's all done and it's all cozy. I mean, they exist, but it's the few and far between. It's a different way of recording now. But I went from basically Ireland, and that basically cut my teeth into the whole session game, and I managed to land a gig with a band in Scotland for the Iron Horse, and tour most of the Europe and the Middle East, and with a few stints I got to, like, in the States and Orlando, and then from there I went back to Ireland for a little while for a
Mm-hmm.
stint to do archaeology, believe it or not. That's another thing that I do along with.
Wow.
I really enjoy it. I really enjoy archaeology. It's a really amazing and interesting job. Holding something that's like a 5,000-year-old relic in your hand that's not been touched there for all that time is quite a thing. So I needed something to make my brain work. I couldn't do one of those jobs. I like stacking stuff in like a whiskey distillery, like I did once, where it was like putting the whiskey in boxes and doing that 8 hours a day. It would just have killed me. I needed something that stimulates my brain to think, okay, this is really cool. This is an interesting. Even if I'm freezing, I don't mind that. I'll put up with like all the, the uncomfortable things that nature tends to throw at you, especially in Ireland and Scotland when you're out in the freezing cold rain. I don't mind that if the job's interesting, but that was great. So from there, I went to Barcelona for 10 years, lived in Barcelona, played a lot of jazz bars in Barcelona, came back to Scotland after those 10 years and basically started to get my musical career back off the ground again, slowly but surely. And that's roughly around the time that 2015, released my first EP that had been sitting there since 2007.
Right.
Met up with Dweezil Zappa for after all that time. When I'd been talking to him online, went down and joined him in the festival hall and in London, which was brilliant. Came back up and I obviously got married, and for the last like 3-4 years, things have been in the up and up, and doing a lot of things with like the Up Close series as well that I've been putting out onto YouTube, and I'm just like building things up gradually, putting feelers out and trying to get myself back together again in a professional musical way. But it's been brilliant so far, really. I mean, there's a lot of things in the background I don't want to speak about just yet.
Right. I know some of those things. I know.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I got back in contact. I've always been in contact with the guys across in the Middle East and Uzbekistan, and we'll put that together again. I'm looking forward to that. So we're going to have a live, two live tracks come out in the very near future. I'm looking forward to that. Some other things that I can't talk about yet because they're not completely in the bag. Obviously got an album released with that manner and a lot of brilliant guest musicians coming up at the end of the year. That's more into the modern orchestral jazz fusion department, which has just been a joy to listen to all these guys that have obviously had like a lifetime of experience under their belt. And, there's a lot to be said when you're playing and you're recording with really great musicians of that caliber. It really puts you into a different headspace.
Since we've got Mitzi here, if she's still here, you said that when you were touring with the Iron Horse that you guys played in Orlando, at Disney World. I don't know. Mitzi might be able to answer this question. You said that you swear that you saw Sean Lane in the audience.
Yep, front row, smack bang in the middle of like everybody left and right.
What year? What year would that be in?
That was the tail end of '99, coming into 2000, and it was definitely everything was advertised in Orlando at the time in Epcot with the 2000 banner, so it was got to be the big, Disney Millennium thing. So it was around that time. Yeah, and it was. I'm absolutely positive it was Sean. It was in the front there, sitting there like center.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking maybe. I mean, Mitzi might, if she's still in there. I think she is. Yeah, Mitzi. We'll wait and see if Mitzi responds, if she has any recollection of Sean being in Florida in 2000, because they all live down in Florida. I think Mitzi was down there by then. I'm pretty sure.
There was definitely if it wasn't Sean, it was certainly someone that looked like him. And I can tell you if I'll tell you live. I'll tell you I was like there was a couple of toilet stops in the way back out of that.
You were scared.
It was like, really? And I talked to my sound engineer at the end of it, and Diggy Winchester at the time, and he was like, I was just as well you didn't suck then. I was like, yeah, just as well. But it was a
2000. Mitzi's asking what year that was. You're saying
2000. That it was just before 2000. It was I think it must have been about October '99. But the 2000 Millennium bags and all the rest of it had been rolled out the door. It was the start of the millennium thing.
Everybody's getting ready for Y2K, and
it was
right.
it was a big deal. Yeah.
So we'll let her think about that, and she'll let. But so you had already listened to Sean Lane by then, obviously, because you were So like, tell us about that. Like, what was the first time you were turned on to Sean Lane?
Yeah, that was a really interesting kind of experience, because I had literally passed the music shop when there was in the VHS tape of VHS, and I listened to that. That's how long ago it was. The videotape was being played in the television at the front of the music shop window. I think it was Walton's, and that was it was in Ireland, in Dublin. And I was like, who's this guy? And I just I couldn't hear anything, but I could see what was going on was obviously something that needed closer inspection.
Your radar went off when you saw the flight of the murder hornets going on the fretboard.
It was it was one of those, like, okay, I'm going to have to look into this. And it was actually, I never thought any more about it. I'd gone up and I'd seen the name on the show. I thought, Sean Lane, that's a name I can remember. Now, at the time, I used to trade a lot of solos and practice a lot with an old student, Fionn Rossum. And I said to Fionn, I was like, there's a video there in Walton's music shop. Maybe go and check that out. And he did, and he went and he bought both the videos, and of course we sat there and watched it in his apartment. And just as you can imagine, the usual, the jaw hit the floor thing. It was that whole, oh wow, that is actually capable. Someone's actually capable of playing that on a guitar. So it was an eye opener for both of us, and that became part of our musical diet for the next couple of years, along with the Paganini stuff and the Arteta music that we were listening to as well. So that would be about. I'm trying to think now, when 93, 94, something like that.
And they were still playing his instructional video in the window in Scotland in '94. Still playing
Ireland.
Ireland. Sorry, Ireland. Yeah. Oh wow, that is a trip. Mitzi just said that that damn well could be that.
Right. Wow.
She said he and her father, Mitzi's father, went to Orlando, around that period of time. So we're gonna. Yeah, that gives me chills. I think that most likely was because by then you were well aware who Sean Lane was, so your radar would be probably pretty accurate.
It was, I was when I saw it, I didn't want to kind of stare at the guy, because I was sitting there thinking, if that is who I think it is, there's two things going to happen. He's going to wonder why I'm staring at him, and I'm going to start to crap myself. So it's kind of, so I'll just pretend he's not there so I can get through the gig. So, and I did, and it was great. I was actually hoping that I could, stop him at some point after the gig, because he stayed for the entire thing. And by the time it was over, we went off stage and we got back up. They were ushering people to go forward, because the band had actually stopped so many people. There was a blockage in that part of Epcot, and the suits came down to see what the big fuss was all about. But by that point, Sean was gone, so it was a bit of a damn, missed him. Anyway, maybe next time.
But just meeting in that way, though, he's listening to you play, man.
Yeah.
And he would. That's what I was saying the last time we talked about this. He would definitely have known who the Iron Horse is, and would have been very curious to go and see that live. He would have been more so than anybody else in definitely the city of Memphis. He would have known right away, because he'd already been over there so many times. You guys' name, you could have. Of course, Sean knew so many bands, it was insane, and he would know their history, and he was like a walking encyclopedia. So odds are, and now I think the odds have just increased dramatically that absolutely was the experience. What a trip, man! That is really cool.
Yeah, it was one of those. It was one of those moments you're left thinking, okay, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But
do you remember the music?
Certain.
Do you remember the songs, the set list, any particular standout moments of that performance that were really
Yeah,
heavily like "Take it away, Roy" kind of
well,
moments?
well, what was really bizarre about that gig was there was a lot of strange things happened at Epcot. There were I never got a chance to really play in that band lineup, as in the sense of play too many solos. But the chances that I did, I took, and they were like fleeting, and they were there, they were gone, because the kind of band that it was more like I was supporting in a supportive role of
Mm-hmm.
other musicians that played the more technical aspects of the tune, which I really enjoy as well, playing rhythm backup. But that was my role more in that band than it was taking the spotlight like a lot of other guys would do, and I was perfectly happy with that. But the other great thing about that gig was the guy that was engineering, along with our engineer, was Van Halen's sound engineer,
Oh
and
wow!
yeah, and he was on that gig. He was like, ah, great, he's like, blah blah blah. He was really full of energy, really cool guy. I've got a picture somewhere. I'll maybe bring it up in the next time of a podcast.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, this is really cool. I never expected to actually be sitting here, playing this gig with Van Halen's sound engineer and meet Sean Lane. And just to boot, I'm thinking, this place is great. Who else am I going to bump into? I'll have to come across and live here.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, yeah, it's time to apply for asylum.
Well, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
Man,
The,
that's kind of a
the,
trip. I want to see that picture. Regardless, man, we can post it on the
his name was Bob.
Mediocratics thing.
His name was Bob. I take it that was probably Robert. I do have a picture somewhere. I'll look it up for the
Yeah,
next time.
please.
Yeah, yeah, he's quite a character, full of life, a bit like Van Halen himself. But yeah, it was kind of that gig was a trip, man. I mean, I think what was really cool about it, the same place just outside the door in Epcot, that this little girl from forget the country, um, the place that where the hell was it? Ethiopia.
Hmm.
And she would come up and she would go like, coffee, coffee. And of course, we were all like, yeah, well, give us some more of that stuff. And I swear not, the cup was about that size. And whatever the coffee was, how it mixed with the sugar was just like, you know, wow. It's like, we'll have another one of them. This is great. So, of course, we were like jumping. It was a great gig and a great setting and meeting all these wonderful people. So, yeah, I would go and do that one again.
Mm.
Definitely. So if Diane was the girl that was organising the gig for us way back in 99, 2000, if she's listening to this, you know, yeah,
Wow.
get me across there again. That was a great gig.
Maybe that'll. Hey, who knows? With this thing coming up with the Uzbekistan guys, you never know, man. Something
Well,
viral occurs. You guys may be in high demand.
well,
I
that
mean, we're of course it'll take a year or so before we're out of quarantine with all the lockdowns
no,
and everything. But
no.
I don't know.
Yeah, who
Stranger
knows?
things.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Certainly, like I mean, the guys that would be wonderful to actually play live with the guys again because, excuse me, the original situation when I think I explained that before. It was like basically flying by the seat of my pants. The gig itself was literally plugging into a JI box by just the guitar into a little CS3 compressor pedal straight to front of the house. No backline, no guitar effects, nothing. And that was televised throughout the whole of the Middle East to millions of people. So it was a really nerve-wracking gig too. And there's no way you can go back and edit the footage if you made a mistake. It was just that's your lot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, that I had rehearsed enough where I felt I could pull that off with the gear that I had at hand, and it came off pretty good for what it was. And I was really happy with the performance and everybody else for that matter. But these guys are like really mentally talented. They had this one. It wasn't a oud they were playing. It was another kind of traditional Uzbek instrument. Where the rhythmically, to give you an idea, just how advanced these techniques are, they're thousands of years old. I'd never seen these techniques employed before, and that's including when I was stayed in Spain and studied with some people down in the south of Spain, the flamenco techniques, which is obviously where these techniques come from, is way in the Middle East, and has come
Right.
down through the Silk Road into Europe and beyond. And this technique that they had. It was like they had a different dynamic voice for each finger as it was playing a row of 4 notes. And on the repeat, they would play with 3 fingers, but it was like they had a harder dynamic in the thumb. The third finger, the middle finger, had a slightly less dynamic, and then as it revolved around about these 7 notes, the dynamics between the fingers would change. So you got this real swirling kind of revolving kind of phrase, but it sounded different every single time. But it was done so flawlessly, you would have thought that it was intentionally written out that way. But they do it as they feel, which makes it even more strange. And it's all played in different, really strange times like 11/16 and so on and so forth. But they do it so naturally. It's not something that's like really thought out. And it just fascinated me. I thought, here we are stuck in the West with the Western ideas and logic and our Western ideas about improvisation, and these guys are doing something completely different that is probably has never been really talked about in the West in any great depth. So I was really hoping to get by and get to see the guys again and actually get an education into their background and their music somewhat more. We were under a great deal of pressure back then to get the gig done and dusted and to meet these, have this meeting of cultures together to get the gigs out, rolled out the door and played live. And by which point we just had to go home. We had a little bit of time with each other to try and discover a little bit about each other's culture, but there just simply wasn't enough time to sit down to get into the real nitty gritty of exactly what was what makes up what the music they play. So
Yeah.
I was looking. Hopefully that day will come where I'll be able to sit down with them and pick their brains a bit more about their background and where they're coming from.
Yeah. Mitzi was commenting. She says that there should be a lot more people in here watching this, but we didn't really advertise this at all. This is the first time that we've actually gone legitimately live. The previous one, we pre-taped it in case something went wrong, and then we ran the whole thing without any edits or cuts in it, and that one just ran as a premiere, but this one is actually legitimately live. And so far, no bumps. I think everything's worked out, like really, and so I think as now that we've gotten our feet wet, we can start doing this pretty regularly and then get more advertisement ahead of time of what, like a schedule set up, because what we're wanting to do with this is after we're finished with the Sean section, we're going to be moving into the Eric Gales section, and then and from onward, we'd like to start trying to get maybe even other people onto the show at the same time.
Yeah.
And let's see, I think okay, and here's a bug that I'm talking about here, Mitzi. Like, I can put Mitzi's last thing she chatted up on screen. Do you think Sean being double jointed have anything to do with his playing? What do you think to that?
Well, I think there's a high possibility, and I'll tell you what makes me think that there is definitely something in there. I had to work really extra hard to try and get my fingers to play what he was playing for the augmented pattern and one of these the huge stretchy thing. Everybody will know what I'm talking about when I say that. Because it is incredibly difficult to pull off and pull off well. Mm-hmm. I think definitely having something double jointed in his left hand would have made that possibly easier. But I think he also had just the way that Sean was. He dare I say natural facility. Some people just have it, and I think possibly combined with like this crazy thing that he had, stretch thing that he had with his hand. He didn't seem to grimace at all, when he was playing it. It didn't seem to be any sort of stress to him. But I remember when I tried to play it for the first time way back 27 years ago, I was thinking, okay, this could do some serious damage if you don't warm up properly. And for a long time, I couldn't play it. And to this day, if I don't warm up, I still have problems playing it. But he seemed to just, it didn't.
Just
so
grab
possibly,
and go.
Possibly.
So it could have been. And Busker's asking if you think that Sean was ambidextrous, and are you ambidextrous?
No, unfortunately. I am dyslexic. So
there could be.
I'm actually naturally a lefty. I'm a left-handed player, but I picked up on the guitar and played right hand because that's what was around me when I was a kid, and I just continued with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel more more natural on the left than I do the right. So possibly, I've never
Quite.
put my mind too much more overthought that too much.
Let's
Um,
see if it's going
I
to.
I think what does make things a little bit easier for me, for some phrasing to play things back to front, uh, so it comes a bit more natural to me because I used to write upside down and back to front naturally, so everything was like mirror image when I was a kid, and I had to go and study how to write properly, but
Yeah.
I would write everything upside down and back to front, and the when it comes to musical phrases, sometimes as well, some things in reverse are a lot easier for me than they would be for normal ways of playing,
She
and vice
says, yeah.
versa.
So yeah, you can see when I pop these on the screen, right? So Mitzi says Sean was, as far as writing goes.
Uh-huh.
So she's saying that he could write with both hands, and I
Wow.
had heard that too,
Yeah.
um, or knew that too. I mean, but I want to say, and Mitzi can tell me if this is a legend or not, but I want to say that he could write two different sentences at the same time. Now that might be a little crazy, I don't know,
That wouldn't
but
surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, I do know that, and maybe you can correct me here. Uh, the he used to take out books and book. I mean, tons of books and things like something like butterflies. You know,
mm-hmm,
um, and he would absorb the information and be able to tell you everything about that,
mm-hmm,
regardless of what it was. He had an incredible memory as well as an incredible facility. So there you go. There's confirmation. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think that goes a long way as well. I mean, the some of the best musicians I've certainly played with and recorded and toured with have incredible, not just memory, but they're able to apply what it is they've learned to what it is they're doing. So I think a lot of the Indian guys, and again, you can confirm this with me as well, when he went to tour in India, they were really surprised at how much he had um, understood and put into a context that was easy for both them and Sean to play. He was speaking their language, which is like really quite something when you look at the language of Indian music and you understand what it's made up of. There's a lot in it. It's really incredibly complex, and there's a lot to memorize. And I'm thinking, okay, if you're talking, yeah, there we go, there we
yeah.
go. That makes a lot of sense because uh, that would make perfect sense. Because when I was looking at the classical Indian music, I'm thinking, man, this is going to take this could take a lifetime to memorize. Even getting halfway through this, and apparently
Yeah.
Sean was able to get this memorized and actually into his fingers and understood in a way that both they could understand and he could understand it. So they were stunned when he was able to replicate their music and in a way that it was played almost like water off a duck's back.
It's
That's a
like,
kind of that's savant. That's savant territory. You can't argue with that.
yeah, that's that sheer genius. That's
Yeah.
that reminds me of that other guitar player, Paul Pena, who was from San Francisco, and he was blind, and he was an avid shortwave radio enthusiast. He had all these shortwave radios, and he would tune into these different broadcasts coming from all over the world. You could pick them up from different places or whatever. And
Yeah.
there's a movie out called Genghis Blues, and Paul Pena was kind of like he was a bluesy blues rock, sort of a Hendrixy guitar player.
Yeah.
It's the same guy that wrote Big Old Jet Airliner that Steve Miller would later cut, and then he also wrote Move Away From Here that Susan Tedeschi did a version of that with Derek Trucks.
Right.
Anyway, he stumbled onto these Tuvan monks that were doing throat singing,
Oh yeah.
And he
Wild stuff.
had the wherewithal mentally to tell that. He said at first he thought his radio was messing up until he was able to hear that that was actually a human voice that was making these noises. And
Yeah.
that's where these guys can like split their they can like but they can do two notes at once, and they
Yeah.
can do like chordal things. And so Paul Pena taught himself how to do that. And by the time he went over to tuba, he had spent all that time. And I think Sean Lane was the same way with Indian music, because
Yeah.
he had that massive collection of world music before anybody knew what world music even was. And I remember when I first met him in the studio and we started swapping records, I would bring up, stuff that I knew he already knew, but he didn't have a copy of, like Al Di Meola records and various stuff like that. And he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I haven't heard that in years." And we didn't have the internet. And my favorite one was I brought him a Sam Cooke and the Soul Stirrers record cassette tape that I had bought at a truck stop that had all of these gospel songs that they were singing all these 5-part harmonies on that were just insane. That wasn't like a big deal. And I want to say he kept the tape for like a week and he brought it back to me, and he had the entire thing memorized and started doing like the chords on the guitar of just about every song that was on that thing. And I know he had sat down and just like done it like I would have to do it, but he had the whole album memorized. And of course he told me Sam Cooke's life story just from A to Z. It was just like, and how he even got in the band. That was the first band that the Soul Stirrers that Sam Cooke was ever in. And so that's how I even found that out. I was like, so I know that he was, we had those tapes, those DAT tapes, and I played, I think before I gave them to Diane, I played one of them and listened to it, and all of a sudden it kicks into an Indian album, and I can't tell you the name of it. I'd have to go back and find out. But so I know that was probably, it's very similar to the Paul Pena thing. He probably, by the time he made it to India, I mean, who knows? He probably had some of the most obscure Indian music completely memorized.
It wouldn't surprise me because you look at certainly when I looked into the transcribing some of the solo work on great pianos, and I looked at like the finer details in some of the little tiny sections, like the finer bends. I'm thinking, okay, this is a guy that's obviously not just studied one particular avenue of blues. He's actually went through the whole range of different ways of playing blues, like Texas
Yeah,
blues, like down to like rural, you know, the real
yeah,
Mississippi stuff. You can hear it in like the way he's organized certain passages. It's like, okay, there's a lot more to it than just meets the ear in the first listen. You have to really take it apart to see all the other things that are inside the the piece, the actual playing itself, and what he's actually put together. The thing that I found really interesting was when he was doing the tritone um, stuff, was this transition that he was making from the more rock side of things into this more ethnic thing that was world music
mm-hmm,
thing that was developing. And I could see that he was expanding his musical horizon in ways that he hadn't. It's almost like he'd done that. It's like he'd said to himself, "Okay, this part I'm done with that. I've spent as much time as I want to in this area. I'm going to move on to this now."
mm-hmm.
That transition for a lot of players, I think, is a very difficult one, and you find with a lot of, especially rock instrumentalists or whatever instrumentalists, they tend to stick within the one genre, and they never seem to move away from it. They stay within the safety confines of it, and it's because it's difficult. It's difficult to
Yeah,
step out and go into place on. It's not easy when you're actually really comfortable in one place and really good at that in that one place to step out and go, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to try like and play a bit of jazz now. A bit of jazz is one thing. Becoming a really good jazz player is something else entirely. But it's like this fearlessness that Sean seemed to show towards stepping out of, okay, I've done with that. I'm going to go into here now. And it was just boom, it was done. It wasn't even like
Mm-hmm.
he said he was going to do it. There was nothing advertised. It was like no sooner had you heard him do one thing, he just shut the door on that, or not completely, but left it a little bit ajar. But I'm moving on to here now, and I really liked that about his playing. It was always evolving, you know. And I would have loved to have seen where he was going to be going. You can only begin to imagine. But from what I've transcribed so far and what I've understood is this element of jazz was becoming more and more apparent in his playing, and certainly the Indian aspects and the more ethnic sort of world music approach.
Well, he had always said to all of us that the Powers of Ten album was 1/3 rock, 1/3 jazz fusion, and 1/3 classical music, and so that
Mm-hmm.
was, that he had that was his vision for that record, and so. And then on Tritone Fascination, that sounds like that you nailed it. That he started bringing in. Okay, now we've done that, so now let's bring in. He's still a rock player at heart. He grew
Mm-hmm.
up playing in
Yeah,
rock bands and playing in Black Oak, Arkansas, so that was still in there. But now it's like rock and jazz and Indian. Maybe that was what the point.
yeah. Well,
Because he did the Hendrix song on there. He did Peace in Mississippi, and then he did and then the Kaiser Nankara. But there's some Indian. Now you're saying that on Tritone, there's some Indian influences all over that record. So you may have solved the case on that, Sherlock Holmes.
I don't know if I've solved it, but I mean, I can certainly see I can see the venture
Mm-hmm.
in this almost natural inquisitiveness that you find in
Yeah.
great musicians, where they're not afraid to go like, okay, well let's have a look in this and see if I can utilize some of this and bring it in. And you can see that transition starting to happen. I'm liking where this is going. I'm liking where it's taking them. So yeah, that's been really interesting to see that transition and see the little some of the note choices as well. But he would normally play within like the safe confines of something that was modal, and his
Mm-hmm.
lines and his playing in something like Powers of Ten has shifted towards this bigger picture. And it's a bit like when you listen to early Alan Holdsworth, and how you can see how he's progressed as a musician through the years, and I can see that in Sean's progress as well. That was really interesting.
I
Um,
would I would love to think that if Sean
mm,
were still around, that you two would be doing something because of the
oh
that
well,
just that
yeah. Well, I
because
think I
when I
will.
first well
Mm,
you've got the Scottish sound that comes natural to you, but comes across to me. I'm hearing something different, and then that's what it is,
mm,
and that's very interesting. That would have been really really cool to hear Sean explore something like that. With you.
yeah. Well, I think that
Mitzi was saying how
yeah.
he was great to go to museums with, and then you're the archaeologist, so that would have been really really interesting to hear those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. Like the strange thing when I would go to a museum, because even now with dyslexia, when I'm reading something, I can't read something for too long in black and white. If it's black print on a white piece of paper, it makes me go dizzy. So I've got to
Mm.
kind of make the paper a different color in order that the information will somehow filter through, and I can memorize it as well. And it's the same with musical notation. I have the same sort of dilemma that I have to make sure that the notation and the background is a different color in order to actually comprehend what's being done sinks into my memory. So it would be really interesting to have someone like Sean explain to me in detail, you know, what happens in the theatre when you actually see something written out. There's only so much my brain will take in, and I have to have either someone spoken the words spoken to me so I can listen to it, or I have someone else to read it, because it actually makes the words start to do this. You know?
I have to switch everything into dark mode. Has
Yeah,
that been helping you? Dark
yeah,
mode.
that
I took forever
kind
for
of,
Facebook to
kind
get
of,
there, but
oh, kind of.
Twitter was there, and then I was like, oh, thank God, now I can see this stuff. But that's yeah, what a trip, man.
Yeah,
So
like,
I wanted to ask you about this one coming up. So
hmm,
on the next video, are you going to be doing different solos from different places, all in the video, or how's that going to break down?
right, okay, well,
Or do we want to keep the cat in the bag for now?
no, well, I mean, like, it's pretty much out there. Anyway, what I've done is I've obviously did the main part of the solo for Grey Pianos and the part two of the second look. So what I'm doing is at the very last run section of Grey Pianos, the part that's got the meat and potatoes, if you want. This is a look at his more technical, the technical side and his facility. So anyone out there that is really looking for like something really challenging is going to really enjoy this part of this video, because I felt that in the Not Again solo and the Grey Pianos solo, there was a great deal of that taken up with some of the finer nuances in his playing, and which was really important to I feel for especially younger players to get. And it's really good to see. There's a couple of guys as well on Instagram I saw that I'd like looked at what we've done on on that, and they've taken it to heart, and I can see them playing it, which is great, because that's exactly what what intended was spreading the news and actually getting that into the next generation that's coming up behind us. What I wanted to do for this one was just look at the most insane side, the more insane side of his facility and his playing. So it's a focus on that. So what I've got is the end of Grey Pianos and a specific run just before the final ending on Grey Pianos. And then I've taken some of his key phrases that are really challenging and have that against the backdrop will be on the Triton album 7.5, and play those phrases in the same key so people can actually get an idea how it sounds like in an improvised setting against that backdrop, if you know what I mean. That will be the main guts of the third and final one, apart from the Non-Caro special that will be coming after. Once I'm going to work a bit on that one myself. I must admit that's been a real that's been a challenge.
Yeah,
the Non-Caro one. It's and in a good way.
In a good way, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that, man. That's going to be just to hear. Yeah, so and then, we've got to bring up our guy, man, Eric Gales. So we're going to be talking about the blues and talking about virtuosos in the blues. Usually as a contradiction in terms, and I don't mean that negatively. It's just that blues is not really about virtuosity. It's more about soul, and everything. And so Kelly Banks is even asking, let's see if I can pull, when these comments are longer, they don't show the whole thing. When is the last video on Sean out, and when is the new one on Eric Gales coming? And so when do you think the
Hey Kelly, how you doing? Yeah,
go
I'm
ahead.
looking for I want to get this one for the end of the month, the part 3 for the end of the month. Hopefully it will be the end of the month. If not, it will be very shortly after. And the following week will be the extra video on Non-Caro, for the simple reason that I have to memorize all that to make the video itself. The memorization of that is a mission in itself. You can understand that it's not exactly what we're talking about. Sean here, we're not talking, BB King. And I don't know, disrespect to BB King.
No disrespect, right?
You understand that it's just that there's a lot of information to memorize and it has to flow. So that will probably be definitely the end of this month for the third one. So 31st, I'm looking for a release of the third. If not the 31st, definitely the first. And the following week for the Non-Caro.
I mean, that's only in a few days. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and then stepping into Eric Gales and looking at getting to your subject of Eric's playing, and so I hope that answers your question there, Kelly. The idea of virtuoso in blues, you're saying, I don't see, the way I see it is there's having technique and then there's having serious facility, and I think the two things are different in a very big way. You can have amazing technique. B.B. King had amazing technique.
Yeah.
Stevie Ray Vaughan had amazing technique. All the great blues guys with brilliant vibrato. Eric Gales, I mean, come on, you know. They all have amazing technique. Some of them have more facility, and some of them don't. But they all have incredible technique. So to use that in the same breath as blues is, I think, is correct. You need incredible technique to be able to make the blues sound great, and you have to have pitch bend perfect vibrato to make it exceptional. It's just something you have to have in
Yeah.
your bag. If you don't have that, it ain't going to happen.
And
I'm
that's
sorry, I know.
and I think that's one of the hallmarks of Eric Gales' playing is
Mm.
kind of like when Carlos Santana was famously on Arsenio Hall back in '93, and he was talking about how Eric Gales could just grab one note
Yeah,
and just sit and play that one note, and your whole mind would just stay right there on it, and it it's like when to do it, how long to do it, the amount of vibrato, and then how you play with the vibrato. Is it really fast or is it slowing and bending? And so
you have
that's
to
gonna
feel.
that's
You have to be able to feel and trust your instincts and trust your feeling.
hmm
And I think some people find that simpler than and easier than others. I think it's very difficult for some people to open up, and it's not that anybody there's some people can do it and some people can't. It's just that for some people it becomes so natural. You feel that easiness with them, and
hmm
because you feel that easiness with them, and they're able to do it so play it so eloquently, it comes across as something that's exceptional, which
and
it is.
a lot of people don't know this, and since I got to work and I was blessed to spend 6 years with Sean Lane, and I've spent now about 20 years with Eric Gales. I was blessed to be able to be one on one with both of these gentlemen. Um, there's a tie that binds these two together that's not just the city of Memphis, and that is when Eric did his first record when he was 15 years old. You I think you can find this credit on All Music, but Sean Lane is credited on that record, and
Right.
that is because his older brother Eugene was had the wherewithal to say, "Okay, well, we're going to take Eric is right there, and now we've just got signed, and so we're going to bring Sean Lane in to get some of the what you're the agency, to get some of that perspective to add to it." And so that first Eric Gales band record, where he's young and has that brim, that hat on, Sean's influence is all in that record, and I think that Eric
Excuse me.
carried that. They were really, really super good friends, and he told that story at the memorial about meeting Sean and thinking he was going to get lessons from him, and Sean said, "You don't need any lessons. Well, let's just sit here and trade licks." And he
That's all.
said that, and Eric said it was so adorable, man. It was
Yeah.
just, he goes, my head got so big, I couldn't fit out the door of newbies because he was just like the rest of us when it came to Sean. It was like, how on earth can somebody be this good and
Yeah.
on the guitar? And so that's what's going to be really interesting to hear your analysis when you start looking into the Eric Gales licks, because you've got you've got also the upside down and backwards thing going on too, where he's
Yeah.
playing and he's right-handed while he's doing it. So all of his thought is actually on the fretboard, yet the strings are backwards. So that's going to be really interesting to hear your
Yeah.
take
That's
on
gonna be
that when you
that's
start.
gonna be pretty wild. Yeah, it's
And I'd
gonna be
love to
pretty
hear
wild.
where you could figure out right there is a Sean Lane influenced area of this solo. So we definitely
Yeah.
probably should pick something off the very first Eric Gales band record for you to analyze, like maybe "Sign
Yeah.
of the Storm" or "Resurrection." Resurrection's got a really good solo in it,
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm up for most
because
anything.
we haven't really touched yet on which ones we're going to do of Eric's.
Yeah, I
But
think like, and I've got like this, obviously this recording as well to do with the guys in Uzbekistan. So,
hmm
and a couple of other things. So I'll be starting the Eric stuff. I imagine that the end of November, start of December.
right.
So I've got these like, obviously I've got like a commissioned work to finish that brings in the pennies and pays
Yep.
the bills and helps the with the kids and the food and table and all the rest of it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that immensely. This following the Eric Gales thing, we'll have like the Alan Holdsworth thing as well. But
Holdsworth.
Staying on the Eric Gales, what I really loved about his playing was, and something that seems to be with him, is when you hear gospel music, this is how it hit me. When you hear gospel music and you see that energy and how they propel that feeling into the music, that's what it's like every time you listen to it. He has that way of connecting, and that is the special. That's the key. That's the thing that makes it so good for me. For me, it's not just what he's doing or what he's playing. You could analyze that till the cows come home. You could have all written down and have all the right notes and play it with the same amount of feel as you possibly can muster. But the fact of the matter is, when you hear him in an improvised session or a setting, as you'd say, when he's playing live on stage, it's coming, whatever comes next, and he's on that, And
he has this video that
that's the beautiful thing about it. You can't. It's almost like you cannot learn how to. What's the old saying? You can't learn experience.
There you go. Yeah.
And it's
well
like
said.
When you're experienced every night and you're connecting with something bigger than we all are every night, sometimes that energy is just like boom. It's a spark that goes off, and you either are connected with it or you're not. And Eric is, and that's the difference from what I can see between him and a lot of other players.
There's a video that we have on the Eric Gales channel that he explains the very first song that he learned was a gospel song where he learned how to play the bass line with his thumb and play the counterpoint hand picking like Jerry Reed. And so he's going doom 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 doom, and he's picking the but he's doing like double time, and he's hitting it right on the clap, and he's like, and so when you do it slow, it's he gets it slow. But he said in church, every time you're playing in church, that you're going to get to that point where everybody starts going faster, and they're getting more and more and more and more into it. And so that's I mean, he was brought up in the church, and Eugene was the church guitar player in the church band, and was going out on the road with Hubert Crawford and was teaching Eric and his older brother Manny, who was Little Jimmy King, and was teaching them how to play the church songs that were coming up in the week.
Right.
So that's you've nailed it on the head, man. Because
that makes a lot of sense. That energy is there. You either tap into that energy or you don't.
Yeah.
And you can. I've heard like lots of great blues guitarists, fantastic, but they don't always get you. They don't always nail you. And
it's kind of like
you either get taken in with the energy or you don't. And there's a certain man. I wish I had the word that could describe like exactly what it is that I'm trying to say, but some people just have it and some people don't. You either connect with it and you're honest about it, or you don't. It's like that. What's the word that when something's forced? Deliberately forced. That'll come to me. But it's basically when someone's over trying and they're not allowing it just to be, you can overthink something as well, and you can sense that it's a human thing to feel, and everybody knows it. When someone's connecting with it on stage, you can see it, you can feel it. It's like, yes, that's the special spark, and I think
Sean
brilliant to watch. It's brilliant to watch. It's great to feel. So. Yeah, I think that gospel thing is definitely like a huge part of that. And he just taps into that energy every time.
And who knows? That could have been what Sean was talking about when he told Eric you don't need any lessons, because he was like, you've got the core and you've got this advanced abilities already, so let's just sit here and just trade licks. And so I think, because Eric was also listening to Frank Gambale, and he was also listening to Jerry Reed, which was country. So he was getting these influences, and so
it's not contrived. That's what I meant to say.
Contrived. There you go. Good.
It's not contrived. It's as honest as the day's long. That's what I like about it, and you feel that. You feel it.
So, okay, well, I feel like we've kind of covered our bases for right now, and we're going to get your video coming out in the next several days, and we're going to pump that, and Mitzi said right to something, and probably the gospel thing actually. And so yeah, and Mitzi was recommending that we advertise this a little bit, in
Sure.
advance. So
Yeah.
as we get this next one ready to go, we'll do definitely a follow up live, just like we're doing now. And I want to probably with on the Mediocratics, I want to probably try to reach out to a few guitar players and do some in the meantime while you're working on stuff where I can get somebody on and interview them, kind of keep the Mediocratics brand
Yeah.
busy, and then but this series here, this is our me and you, this is our series on these guitar players that it's been really really fascinating listening to your experience, tearing these things apart and really taking a deeper look into them. And I can't thank you enough for the
That's appreciated.
the insights that you've given me along the way, and then to see. Oh, she said right about Eric Gales, and I just so we're looking forward to we'll put out the links. This video will stay up, of course. It'll be everywhere, and we will and I think we'll have to talk to Mitzi and get her on to advertising the next one, because maybe we can get her on the screen with us. Mitzi, it's a lot easier than you think it is. I could send you a DM with an invite. You can just hit it and your phone will pop up on the screen with us.
Awesome.
And so we'll get Lexi maybe to set it up.
Sounds good.
Anyway, so
Well,
let's.
what's been great about it, I think, that it's raising the profile as well, especially I think it's almost like a byword now for a lot of the young players. Everybody knows who Sean is, but certainly to raise the profile on what is the official Sean Lane channel, I think that's been a really important push, and to get a lot more subscribers and to get that, and monetize and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
That's been a real positive push, and happy days. It's
It is, and
long may it continue.
it is, and and congratulations to his daughter just got married, and
No way.
yeah, Ashley
Wow,
got
wow.
married, and
Congrats.
yep, and then the next thing coming out in that camp too is I am almost finished formatting Powers of 10 live to put on the CD Baby for Diane and Ashley, and all of that is going to Ashley, and
Wow.
we're not going to name the name of the guy that we had to pry out of his cold dead hands to get this. We don't even say his name. Mitzi knows I'm talking about. You know I'm talking about. Well,
Yeah.
we're so. And then to continue on the Sean Lane channel, just putting the content on there. I will say real quick before we go on that coming up, I am working on a video of Sean's final performance. That's been up on YouTube, the Smile Fest video, but we finally got a decent copy of the board feed audio, and I'm synchronizing those up to make a better sounding video of that, and that's taken a little while because the two things were recorded at different sample rates, so they kind of drift from one another.
Right.
And so I'm having to go in and do them song by song. It's taken a little while to do that, but that's on the deck. So okay, Roy. Well, let's call it, man, and let's get you back onto the guitar, doing your thing, and.
Yeah, I've got a lot of work to do yet before the end of the month, so I'd better.
Before the end of the month, I know it. And I really appreciate everybody that's tuned in. This was our first actually absolute live thing, and to have Sean Lane's sister Mitzi joining us has been that was a spiritual thing. Thank you so much, Mitzi, and Kelly, and who was the other one?
Bashar was that one?
Let's see, Busker Wilkie, and I'm not. Yeah, I'm probably not seeing everybody that's actually watching, but so we're learning this software, and this was I think we did a great debut. So let's wrap it up, Roy. I will DM you later on, and we'll just go ahead and just share this link around, and everybody can catch up on what we talked about, and we'll see you guys next time.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.